I'm coming into agreement that on our path of self-improvement, that one of the most vital things we must do is remember to treat ourselves like a person and not a project. I think it's very easy for us to get into this cycle of thinking that we ourselves must constantly be fixed when we were never broken. It is not to say that we may not have gone through some things that have causing some fractures, causing something to make us not be who we want to be, but rather accepting that version of ourselves too. Being able to accept it. Being able to accept where you are so that you can acknowledge where you want to go. And then realizing that it's not you that needs to be fixed, but rather released. That as we continue to go through life and many things happen to us along the way, that our responses tend to put up shields for our protection. Our responses to certain situations, to certain environments that we learn to adapt in, typically makes us become less and less ourselves. And this is why it's so important to free yourself from yourself. Because it's not necessarily that you need to be fixed, but rather released. Rather be able to be willing to step into who you fully are. And be okay. And be okay with who that is. And be okay finding yourself. It's not to say, when I say finding yourself, it's not really to say that you're lost, but it's coming into agreement of who you are. And then making a decision based upon who you are and not who you want to become. Because who you want to become becomes this fictitious being in the future. But rather being present, being consciously aware of who you are currently goes back to just being able to accept who you are. Accept all the decisions that you have made that's led you here. And then once you accept who you are and how you've gotten here, then you can acknowledge where you actually want to go. But I think it's breaking that cycle as well of not needing to treat yourself like a project. Because you're not a robot. You're not somebody who should constantly be looking at themselves as something that needs constant improvement, as if you're not already good. But it's acknowledging that good can always become better. And I have like some notes here. And it's really just understanding that if we want to grow in a positive way, we must come from a positive place. It's really difficult for us to grow when our own self-talk about ourselves is negative. When we don't even believe in ourselves. Or when we set ourselves up for these vicious cycles of telling ourselves we're going to do this thing, but we're only doing it to bash the other version of ourselves. Or to kind of try to overcome who we used to be. Rather than stepping into who we want to become. As if the other version of ourselves or the past version of ourselves, which truly is probably the current version of yourself, isn't worthy to be brought along. Isn't worthy to be brought along the journey. When truly you are. Because every other version of yourself has brought you this far. So it's asking yourself, that I come this far just to come this far? Or is there still more for me to achieve, but not in the sense of needing some external validation, but rather internal. Rather giving affirmation to self. In other words, is running the race and knowing that the race is worth running simply because you want to run. Not because the race is going to make you better, but rather deeming it worthy simply because it's you who want to run it. Then it's realizing that even when running the race, that doing your best doesn't always mean succeeding. Like, doing your best doesn't always mean that you'll find success, because the outcome is never consistent. But picking yourself up and being willing to try again, or being accepting that though I may have not succeeded in the eyes of society of what success really means, that be simply because I attempted, I won. It's not to go into this participation award situation kind of thing, but I don't think we value participation enough, because life is not a spectator sport, but it's so many people who would rather view it than actively participate in it, fearing what their end result will be. And when you become a viewer of your own life, you tend to start living in your mind instead of where your feet are. And let's just say for a second that participation awards wasn't a bad thing. Imagine if you would just participate in every activity of your life, in every space, in every crevice, knowing that the space that you take up is yours. So use it. I mean, I think many times we dismiss our own selves, reject our own selves. Disqualify our own selves before we even step onto the track to run the race, even if we do believe that it's worth running simply because we want to run it. We tell ourselves that it's not worth it because I can't win. But it's in the participation of it, not trying, because there is no try. It's either you did or you didn't, but it's being willing to participate in it, even though you don't know what the outcome is going to be. It's removing the power away from failure. It's stripping failure from it. It's stripping failure in the fear of it, rather. It's stripping it to be what it truly is. Being unwilling to participate is still making a choice, because whatever you're unwilling to participate in, you are actively participating in the undoing of self. If you say, man, I really want to do this, but I'm not going to do that, it's you making the decision to participate in the undoing of what you want to do. So there is no try, because you're actively doing something regardless of the decision that you make, because every yes is saying no to something else, and every no is saying yes to something else. So it's asking yourselves, what have we been saying yes to by responding to no to something else? And all the no's that we're saying, what are we saying yes to? And then not bashing ourselves from those decisions, but accepting who we are from them. Who has it created us to be? So that we can acknowledge how to make those changes so that we can go to where we want to go. Oh, that's kind of what I put, but I think it's really just coming to, as I'm saying this, I'm getting end time revelation, and I'm just coming to further agreement that, like I said before, it's a cycle, right? So what's not resolved always repeats. What's not resolved always repeats. If you're unwilling to participate in your life in this area of your life, what makes you think that you're going to be willing to participate in the next one? Granted that you even get the opportunity to. It's being consciously aware that this is your life. I should be an active participant in it. Not just waiting for life to come at me, but meeting life where it is. Because you lose nothing in trying, but you gain everything in success. You lose nothing in trying. Like I said, though, it's not even really trying, but you lose nothing in participating. but you gain everything in success because the outcome is always inconsistent. You don't know what's going to happen once you press publish. You don't know what's going to happen once you line up and you run. You don't know what's going to happen once you create the business. You don't know what's going to happen once you start selling the thing. Once you start eating the food, once you start going to the gym, you don't know what's going to happen. But you know that participating is the only way that something can. You understand that nothing changes if nothing changes. So me actively participating in that change begins the reaction. Sometimes we shouldn't always be living in life in response to life, but rather reacting. And what I mean by that rather is maybe not the word reacting, but being the input instead of just always trying to respond to the out. Like, cause the reaction and then let life respond to you. Rather than always having to give a response, start producing the reaction. I think that's the only way that things can start really manifesting in your favor. Is when you're not waiting for life to just hand it to you, but rather going out there and taking it. Hopefully in a legal manner, right? But I think that even goes up to say this, that although it may not always go the way that you want, right? Just beauty in the struggle. And sometimes falling is just the affirmation that you were standing in the first place. Sometimes just not being where you want to be lets you know that you're still on the journey. Yes, you may have not made it to the destination, but it doesn't mean that you're nowhere. It just means that there's further road to travel. And how amazing it is that you're still on the journey, that you started the journey in the first place. And I think the last thing I really want to just get onto is understanding that if it's out of your hands, that it shouldn't be on your mind. Because if all you can do is think about it, then it's probably not worth thinking about. Coming into peace that all you can do is all that you can do. Because you're not perfect, but you are a person who is simply not a project. So start treating yourself as such. Treating yourself with the grace, treating yourself that a lot of the accumulation of what's happening to you or where you are right now is just been in response to other things prior in life. You've just been responding a lot, reacting a lot. And understanding too that the response is your responsibility. Because you have the ability to respond. But it's asking yourself, what's the best way to do so? And giving your previous self grace, because you did the best that you could with the knowledge that you had available to you at the time. But now that you have further knowledge, now that you've experienced those things, and hindsight is always 20/20, what do you do now? How do you treat yourself now? In this pursuit of becoming something or someone greater than who you are right now, how do you treat who you are right now? Because if you're not giving yourself the affirmation or the validity in itself currently, what makes you think that you're going to give it to yourself when you get to wherever you're trying to go? I think the worst thing that you can do is put your happiness in the future with the fools. Because the future is an enigma. No one knows what it looks like. No one possesses it. And the past is the past. It's already come and gone. All you have is right now. But it's being active in your now. Knowing that where you are right now leads to the future. And what you do in this right now is what leads you to the future. Just going back to the part that you take up space. And the space that you take up is yours. Be willing to use every part of it. Be willing to participate no longer in the undoing of self, but rather in the doing. And the only way to be actively participating in the doing is to do something. But treating yourself like a human because you are one. But everything as a human is not in your control. So if it can only be thought of and you can only think about it, then it's probably not worth thinking about. Find serenity in being able to accept the things that you cannot change, the courage to change the things that you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because you're a person, not a project. And if you made it to the end of this video, I'm super appreciative of just all the support and everything that's just happening. And I appreciate you just making it, because I know I'm touching time here. But life is interesting. So give yourself the opportunity to find yourself. Give yourself the patience and the time in doing that as well. Because listen, this is your first time being you. So give yourself some grace while you're still trying to figure out who you are. If this was helpful to you, awesome. If you like this video, great. If you don't, it's okay, because I do. And hey, if you don't like this one, well, that's why I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.